Let me ask you something. Why does it feel like no matter how hard you work, you're running just to stand still? Why do wages creep up slowly while housing, food, energy and debt surge almost overnight? And why does every major crisis, every single one, end the same way? Ordinary people absorb the pain, the middle class shrinks, and the largest institutions somehow emerge stronger than before. So here's the question most people feel, but don't say out loud. What if this isn't an accident? What if the economic instability you're living through isn't a failure of the system, but a function of it? So by the end of this episode, you'll understand what people mean when they say economic collapse by design, why the World Economic Forum keeps appearing in this conversation, and what this all means for you as an individual trying to stay sovereign in a managed economic world. So let's strip this back to reality. This isn't about secret cabals or shadow governments. It's not about villains in a dark room. It's about incentives. Economic collapse by design describes a system that repeatedly produces crises, responds in ways that benefit the same groups, and then locks those responses into place. At that point, collapses stop looking like a mistake and start looking like a mechanism. Not total ruin, not chaos, but a managed decline. Purchasing power erodes, debt rises, ownership declines, dependency increases. Quite enough that people blame themselves instead of the structure. Modern collapse doesn't arrive dramatically, it arrives slowly. It looks like you earn more but afford less, you save but inflation eats it, you work harder but fall further behind, you comply more but gain less autonomy. The system doesn't want you destroyed, it wants you manageable, because people with assets, leverage and independence are hard to control. People living month to month are not. Every government does it, every central bank defends it, and ordinary people pay for it. When money is created at scale, prices rise faster than wages, savings lose value, debt becomes unavoidable. Inflation is framed as an unfortunate side effect, but look at who it benefits. Governments reduce the real value of their debt, asset holders get richer, those without assets fall behind permanently. If inflation were truly unacceptable, it wouldn't be repeated. Yet it is, again and again and again. At some point, repetition becomes intent. So zoom out far enough and history becomes uncomfortably consistent. The pattern is always the same. Credit is loosened, asset prices inflate, speculation increases, policy tightens suddenly, small players collapse, large institutions buy cheaply. This happened in 1929, it happened in 2008, and it happened again in 2020. Each time the economy emerges, less free, more concentrated, more centralised. Crises don't destroy the system, they refine it for those already positioned to survive. So let's stop talking about abstracts and talk specifics. The 2008 crisis wiped out millions of jobs, trillions in household wealth, entire communities through foreclosures. But at the same time, governments stepped in with massive bailouts. Banks deemed too big to fail were rescued. Liquidity flooded financial markets. Interest rates were slashed for over a decade. But what happened next is asset prices exploded. Those who already owned stocks, property and businesses recovered quickly and then thrived. Those who didn't, well, they spent years just getting back to zero. Meanwhile, institutions that survived the crisis were able to buy distressed assets cheaply, consolidate competitors, lock in market dominance. The public absorbed the risk, the financial system absorbed the reward. Now fast forward to 2020, governments shut down economies and responded with unprecedented stimulus, direct payments to individuals, furlough schemes, business loans and grants. This money absolutely helped people survive, no question. But survival is not empowerment. Because while households were paying rent, utilities and groceries, where did the spending actually go? During lockdowns, people didn't have choice. They bought from Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Netflix, and the numbers tell the story. During COVID, the top US tech companies added over $3 trillion in market value. Amazon's market cap surged roughly 80% in a single year. Apple gained close to $1 trillion in valuation. Nvidia, Microsoft and Alphabet more than doubled from pandemic lows. So while small businesses closed permanently, hospitality collapsed, independent retailers vanished, a handful of global platforms absorbed historic levels of wealth. Stimulus money kept people afloat, but the structure of the economy funneled that money upwards. Now add regulation into the mix. Regulation sounds protective, but it isn't neutral. Large corporations absorb compliance costs, hire legal teams, navigate bureaucracy. Small businesses can't. So under banners like safety, sustainability and stability, independent operators disappear. Markets consolidate, choice shrinks, dependency grows. Collapse doesn't come from chaos, it comes from overstructuring. And this is where the World Economic Forum enters the picture. Let's be accurate. The World Economic Forum is not a government, passes no laws, has no legal authority. But it does bring together heads of states, central bankers, CEOs of the world's largest corporations. The World Economic Forum functions as an elite coordination hub. It doesn't pull levers directly, it aligns ideas, narratives and priorities, and ideas shape policy. Now we address the phrase that shattered trust. You will own nothing and be happy. This phrase came from the World Economic Forum 2016 article and video, framed as a speculative future scenario, not a law, not a mandate. But here's the truth. Context doesn't matter when trust is gone. People didn't hear sustainability, efficiency, access over ownership. They heard no assets, no property, no leverage, no exit, because ownership isn't just material. Ownership is security, autonomy, optionality, and freedom. Historically, people without ownership are easier to control. So when elites, insulated from inflation and housing insecurity, spoke casually about a future without ownership, it didn't sound visionary, it sounded detached. Supporters argue, well, you don't need ownership, you need access. But access is permission-based, ownership is power-based. If you rent your home, subscribe to transport, lease tools, depend on platforms, then someone else controls pricing, terms, continuity and access. And when access can be revoked, happiness becomes irrelevant. The World Economic Forum openly states something that is technically true. Crises create windows for transformation. But when transformation repeatedly leads to less individual autonomy, greater corporate government alignment, more centralisation, people stop believing it's for their benefit. Crisis becomes leverage, not to empower people, but to restructure systems above them. So is this a conspiracy? And no, and that's what makes it uncomfortable. This doesn't require evil intent, only incentives over ethics, coordination without accountability, decision makers insulated from consequences. Collapse doesn't need planning, it needs misaligned power. The system isn't designed to make everyone prosperous, it's designed to remain stable for those at the top. If stability requires a poorer population, higher dependency, less ownership, that's where it drifts. Not out of hatred, but out of indifference. So the real question isn't, is economic collapse designed? It's this, are you designing your life as if it is? Because systems move slowly, individuals who adapt do not. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. When you understand incentives, you stop trusting comforting narratives, you stop waiting for permission, you start building resilience. Economic literacy becomes self-defense, ownership becomes resistance, and clarity becomes power. Not the kind discussed at Davos, but the kind that actually changes your life. If you like this episode and others, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe. And just a shout out to our sponsors. Strong Coffee Company, protein-packed coffee for energy and clarity. Use code Vancrux1 for 20% off at strongcoffeecompany.com. And then we have more labs, clinically proven hydration and recovery drinks. Use code Vancrux1 for 25% off at morelabs.com. And finally, liquor gummies, electrolytes and vitamins for hangover prevention. Use code Vancrux1 for 20% off at liquor.com. That's liqure.com.